Today, in the media conference with Lal Goel, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan, our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. And today, we have a very, very important and special topic, and that is one-man expert commission report. No human masterpiece has been created without great labor. Labor is the source of every blessings. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, veteran IAS officer and expert in labor and industrial relations, has been appointed as one-man expert commission by the Contract Labor Advisory Board of the Ministry of Labor, Government of India, to prepare an action plan for the welfare and development of the migrant labor and contract workers in the context of COVID-19 on 1st May 2020. Dr. Bose is known for his initiatives in the field of labor and industrial management. He had served as Principal Secretary Labor, Kerala, and was elected as the Vice President of the Standing Committee of the Indian Labour Conference. Dr. Bose has a track record of more than 30 years in the field of labor management. On May Day, Dr. Bose held detailed discussions with the representatives of labor unions, employers, and senior officers of the Ministry of Labor on the short-term and long-term measures to be taken to mitigate the sufferings of the guest workers and other workmen. It took 6 months to complete the one-man expert commission report. Dr. Bose prepares the report by doing day and night consultation with all the stakeholders like labor, leaders, artists, artisans, etc. This report was prepared within record time of about 5 to 6 months. This report was prepared when COVID-19 was on its peak without proper basic infrastructure. Dr. Bose took this challenge and completed it by doing several webinars every day tirelessly. Media conference with Lal Goel is proud to be associated with Dr. C.V. Anand Bose IAS. We have done more than 50 media conferences with Dr. Bose, along with different sects of society, such as former Central Minister and sitting Member of Parliament, former Supreme Court and High Court judges, former generals of Indian Army, former Air Marshals of Indian Air Force, former Director General of Police, former Chief Secretaries, former bank chairmen, present and former Vice Chancellors of renowned universities, IAS, IPS, leading doctors, leading advocates, renowned artists, artisans, labor, national leaders of almost all trade unions, Pravasis, service clubs like Rotary Club, office bearer of Red Cross, journalists, social workers, prestigious college professors, teachers, and students, and many more. I might have forgotten to name, but there were, because every week we used to keep a program in which Dr. Bose used to connect and discuss and take the views from the different sects of society, and many of those views, as he mentioned to us, has been incorporated in his report. So we are very, very thankful to Dr. C.V. Anand Bose to give us the opportunity to be one of the tool to connect to the people, and he has taken their suggestions seriously and incorporated in his report. Now, to discuss today about this one-man expert commission report, we have a very, very elite, experienced panel with us who are directly, indirectly connected, related to this report. So I would like to invite my first guest. He is Mr. S. Bhumrao. Mr. S. Bhumrao is the chairman of Labour Welfare Advisory Board of Government of India. He is not only a very successful businessman, but a very humble human being. I would like to invite Mr. S. Bhumrao and
Morning, sir.
take good morning, Mr. Rao. You are the main person because you are the chairman of Labour Welfare Advisory Board, and so we would like to know from you about this one-man expert commission report. Mr. S. Bhumrao, please.
One thing is here, sir. Everybody is there. I am very welcoming to you, all the people. You are attending these. We are working for the poor labor community and the expert committee.
Mr. Bhumrao, just your face is going up. So please, like this it's okay. If you have come close, then face go up. Yeah.
Okay.
Live telecast. I want everybody to see your face. Thank you.
Since 5 years, I am working in this board as a chairman. I visited so many places and so many workplaces where they are working labor in the different fields. I shared with Anand Boji. He is one of the expert and one of the best human being. He is thinking from every time for the poor people. That's why I shared so many issues with him for the labor. What's the problem in the India? So many places, so many cost of living of the labor, and so many different categories of works, oil fields, coal fields, different fields are there in India. And different places, different cost of living also there. In the migration labor, and everybody suffered so much. Before that, we joined in June together about this COVID situation. We discussed so many issues also. Then I requested to the Anand Boji. He is not only working for the labor, he is working for the finance, working for the agriculture policies and education policies. He is one of the intellectuals in India. He is very concerned for the society. That's why I requested him to our board, and we decided we will discuss with him what are the points. I explained, I told him these are the actual problems, practical problems in India labor is facing. That's why, as per your intellectuality or your experience, how best we can suggest to the government, best we can do, how best we can do the labor. This is your principal employer, labor, and these unions. Everybody is important in this society for them. That's why we have to make one policy and we have to give the advice to the government how best they will look after these migration labor and different categories of labor. That's why I requested to him, Anand Bochi. His valuable time and everything, he thought whatever common sense I have, with my common sense, what observed in this my field where I was visited, I explained with him and shared with him, and then he put in a commission. Officially we appointed a single man commission to study the labor issues, and we can submit to the Government of India Labor Ministry as well as Prime Minister also with that report. Then we will try to get how many we can sort it out, the issues, how best we can safeguard the labor in the same society. Without labor, society will not run. We will not live in this society. That's why I requested him. Then he will start and he will what report he made, how best it is. We can discuss with him and he will explain to us. We can recommend to the government also. This is my view, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. S. Bhumrao. And Mr. Bhumrao has mentioned very clearly one thing, and it is that because he is having experience of 5 years traveling from one room to one place to other place, where he has seen the conditions of labor, whether it's in coal field or whether in mines, and he wanted to improvise their living conditions. For that, he was looking for someone, and he found that Mr. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose is the right person. He is a genius and intellectual, and he has done, because Dr. C.V. Anand Bose has done so much work for the labor. So Mr. Bhumrao has decided to assign the work and appointed a one-man expert commission, which was headed by Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, to recommend the conditions of labor as well as the migrants, because the migrants problem also started by that time, and which Dr. Bose has prepared the report as a one-man expert commission, which once he will be submitting, it will go to the government of India, which will take action accordingly. Thank you very much, Mr. S. Bhumrao. I'm sure that because of you, one-man expert commission has been appointed. So whatsoever recommendations are going, it will be definitely far good and very good for the and beneficial for the labor and migrants, and they will definitely be beneficial for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Rao, for giving your opening remark. Now I would like to invite my second guest, and he is Mr. Niloli P. Rajshekharan. Mr. Rajshekharan is a writer, music composer, and CEO of Guru Management Consultants, Bengaluru. His creative and social activities includes publishing 6 Malayalam novels and over 40 short stories. He published 2 English novels, King Pawn, based on Syrian civil war, and Azadi, based on the conflict in Kashmir. He has published Competency Web, The Corporate DNA, and several other papers. He composed over 200 songs for labels and independent music, currently promoting 3 YouTube channels. He is coaching and mentoring startups. He is having experience of 45 years of international director level. He worked in for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. For 15 years in financial services, Bank of India, Chase Manhattan, and Standard Chartered Bank. 10 years in oil and gas, Shell, Exxon Mobil, Qatar Petroleum, and 10 years in non-profits, CGIAR, World Bank funded international system. 10 years in consultancy and teaching MBA students, entrepreneurs, and corporates. He lived and worked in over 45 countries across continents. He is a management consultant, coach, speaker, creative writer, musician, and active on social media. He is a strategist on governance, performance management, leadership development, and HR. His expertise in management of startup, downsizing, high growth, turnaround, and cultural transformation. He is a member of Mensa International. Welcome, Mr. Rajshekharan, on our show. Mr. Rajshekharan, you are also very closely associated with the one-man expert commission, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, and you have also given lots of inputs to him for including in this report. Now, you have already heard what Mr. Rao has mentioned, that how the one-man expert commission has been assigned to do the work for the welfare and the benefit of the labor and the migrants of the country. Now, we would like to know from you your views on one-man expert commission. Mr. Rajshekharan, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Goel. I will, first of all, thank you very much to the other respected speakers. I've already listened to Mr. Bhumrao, a very interesting opening. And now I'll wait to listen to the second speaker as well. But before that, what I would say is my area of focus has been slightly different because there is already a lot of work that has happened on labor. So when we discussed, I expanded in our discussions, the discussions got expanded to artists, artisans, and labor. And the reason is that India's culture and India's base, if I may call it, the heartbeat of India is in the villages. And we have had artists, artisans, and labor. All these are important in very different ways. And unfortunately, this is still not a very organized sector. If you look at any of those, that includes the Vishwakarma community, for example, who have been playing a very significant role in India's history, whether it's blacksmiths or goldsmiths or any of those people who are highly skilled artisans. So my focus is slightly different, and I'll be focusing more on the cultural aspects, which touches on labor, because ultimately culture is what? Culture is a group of activities by people. So I'll fit it into the context. From my understanding, on May 12th, the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, announced the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan with a big economic package of almost 20 lakh crores, which is 10% of India's GDP. And it had, in my understanding, it had two big aims. One was to make the country independent against the tough competition of global supply chain. And the second was to empower the poor laborers, migrants who have been adversely affected by COVID, which my previous speaker has already touched on. And I'm also very happy that we have a government which is very receptive and taking decisions. I understand that a recommendation was made to create a repository, database of migrant labor, which was accepted and implemented very quickly. So it's one thing to make recommendations and reports, and as we all know, sometimes they sit on shelves. But here is a different situation because these will be acted on, which is very, very reassuring, and that will make a big difference in this country. Now, the other reason is the group that we are talking about, which is artists, artisans, and labor, is a very large population. It's very rural, it's marginalized, and poor. So, from whichever angle you look at it, this initiative is a high national priority. There is no question about it. And Dr. Bose, as a one man commission, has a large role to play in this to make sure that all these segments are addressed. So it again, we have had initiatives in the past which fragment things, and we start looking at one piece, and we don't look at the whole piece as a whole. It's like the human body because we have different parts, but if they all don't work together, we don't have a healthy body. So I think it's very important that Bose has started looking at this, and from the report, I can see that he has covered a wide area of recommendations, a very very wide set of recommendations. Now, let me go into what some of those are and why they are important. For example, the recommendations assume certain things to be there. There are some pillars on which the success of these recommendations will depend. The first one is that you have to strengthen the traditional arts, crafts, and labor, and that including Vishwakarma communities. And I would also stress on fishermen. We have a large thousands of kilometers of coastline, and a lot of people live on fisheries. And inland fisheries also very important because we had done a study for fisheries before, and there are a lot of recommendations which can still be implemented. Then, once we have this, we have to look at two sides. One is the supply side, where we have to create a decentralized and a vibrant rural economy with a lot of inclusion of people who have been marginalized. So mainstreaming of them, and that will also create employment, a lot of employment for people. So that's the supply side when things get created. Now we look at the demand side because if you create a lot of things and there is no market for it, we need to address that along with this one. Otherwise, it will not work. So if you look at the demand side, creating a strong domestic market, which is also part of the Atmanirbhar program, is that we have to create a local demand for local products. So replacing imported products. And also in this process, many of the products that we have traditionally had are environment friendly. They are biodegradable. And that will also lead to economic sustainability. So strengthening traditional arts and crafts, stressing the supply side of the equation and the demand side of the equation. Three more things. One, demand side also includes global. Now we call it soft power, we call it cultural exports. So India has a lot of art and literature and products and services which can be exported to expand influence of India. Now, if you get China as an example, that's what they have been doing. So we need to play the same game and increase, if India wants to be a global power, we need to increase our global demand for our products and get part of their mind share. And that's also equally important. And in doing this, one of the important pillars, the fifth pillar, will be utilization of technology for planning, design, transactions, everything. There are things like artificial intelligence, you've got Internet of Things. So we can bring that to get higher quality of our products and services, lower cost, and also massive reach out globally. So a musician sitting a gharana in let's say in Lucknow, for example, can be teaching a student in any part of the world. So a student can be sitting in Amsterdam or sitting in New York and can have lessons from this teacher. So there is a huge possibility with technology for expanding and pushing out Indian products and services into the global market. And finally, all of this, at the end of the day, we have to regain the national pride. We have, unfortunately, in the beginning years of our history, free India, we haven't had products of high quality because priorities were different. And so we depended on imports, and a lot of us believe that the imported products are better than Indian products. Those days have to change. We have to have national pride in our own products and services, and then push it to global leadership. So these are 6 pillars, as I said, as an opening to this, because these 6 are important for both the creation and the sustainability of the recommendations that are done. Now, Dr. Bose has a huge set of recommendations. In the interest of time, I will touch on a few broad groups, and I'm sure it will be expanded out as we go along into further discussions. The first set of recommendations is suggesting some new institutions to be created, set up as seminal or nodal organizations for the development and implementation of national strategies and also for ongoing coordination of the activities. The second is policy interventions. So there are policy changes, programs, or projects which can be implemented through existing organizations or existing entities. That's a second group. And the third group is a set of recommendations for the welfare of the artists. Now I'll just touch on two or three major institutions which are in the recommendations. One is a national mission for art and culture. It will be a flagship entity for promotion of India's culture, soft power, with an external focus globally. The second would be an art authority of India as a seminal agency to nurture, promote, propagate art, craft, and traditional knowledge and skills. So this will lead to several other things like creating a national registry for all labor, artisans, and artists. Today, we don't even know who the artists are, where they are, what their skills are, and which will also lead to a unique identity card system. So we would know all our artists, where they are, etc., which is the basis to start working on an ambitious program like this. Then a national security board to provide social security to artists. If you look at the COVID situation, there were artists who were starving, but they were not attended to as much as migrant labor, to be honest. There were musicians, I know a lot of them, who had no work, but there was no attention, there was no organization, there was no specific focus on those kind of activities. And the third will be a time-bound project for the digital transformation, which I mentioned earlier. Another interesting recommendation is to create an Indian art and cultural service, which is as part of the Indian civil service, which can lead to appointing of cultural emissaries in all the embassies. Because there is a lot of cultural exports that can happen. If you look at Hollywood, for example, it's a cultural export. If you look at BBC, it's a cultural export. If you look at British Council, it's a cultural export. Russia had a strong program of promoting their books and culture in other countries. So we need to start getting into that because we want to be a world power, global power, and this is part of that. And finally, establishing Indian cultural centers in all the big countries. So these will showcase our culture, activities, products, services. And an example would be the Chinese initiative called the Confucius Institutes. China has started this some time back, and they have almost 500 institutes worldwide, including 4 in India. So they are pushing out Chinese culture, Chinese language, and through that, they're creating influence in these countries. So India Cultural Centers is a very, very important recommendation in this. And then, of course, there will be issues to solve. So probably specialized tribunals, which can deal with the issues of artists. Then there are other recommendations. I just mentioned them, like Art Festival Board to showcase Indian arts and forms, Indian Premier Art League events like IPL or ISL. And another important one is to have an international publishing house. A lot of Indians write today in English in all Indian languages, but we don't have a good publishing house, which is global. We go to we go to people like Penguin or international publishers. Nothing stops us from creating a very powerful publishing house, not only for Indian literature, we can publish all literature from other countries as well as an international brand. The other one is an equivalent of BBC, like a TV channel for infotainment for the world. So we have so many channels, and we've got all the technology, all the people to do this. The only thing is to have a focus and create a channel which is globally targeted by an Indian organization, so an Indian TV channel for the world. And the last one to me is an extremely important recommendation is a global Buddhism propagative program. Now, Buddhism is Indian. Unfortunately, Buddhism has been adopted by, fortunately, I would say, Buddhism has been adopted by many other countries, so it's still alive and very vibrant. But we need to push an initiative to research, publish, and build a Buddhist community across the world. And will be a very legitimate move, and it'll give us so much influence in the world scene. Then there are other recommendations which are more, so these were more or less institutional. Now let's look at some of the other ones which are programs. And 2 or 3 of them are very important. One is to professionalize the education. whereas a carpenter or a musician or a painter or a dancer to have professionalized education and certification process. Because the quality of these have gone down because of lack of patronage. In the old days, the kings, the mosques, the churches, the temples, they all were sponsors for these events. And now that role has to be taken by the government to make sure that we don't lose these very important art, etc. Then conferring professional status for artists. Now, I find that many artists are invited to do online shows now, but they don't want to pay them. If you call a carpenter, you call a technician, you call an AC mechanic, you pay them. But still, many artists are not recognized as professionals, and the need to pay them for what they do. And so establishing a professional status for artists is extremely important. Then in universities, establishing academic chairs, introducing art education schemes, and naming them after maybe eminent artists. Then introducing Indology as a subject. We don't have Indology in many Indian universities. Many foreign universities have that. Then the Gurukula system, which needs to be revived, which was a very powerful system. And as I mentioned earlier, with technology, Gurukula system can be expanded worldwide. And that will be very powerful for professions which require a long apprenticeship, like music, which takes years to learn. That's possible. Additional legislations to safeguard the interests of artists, and a centrally sponsored scheme, probably to provide tools, equipment, necessary accessories to artists. Nobody's doing that. And also short-term measures like providing a 6-month assured basic income package for suffering or people or artists who are poor and cannot find their livelihood. There are a few others like setting up heritage and art villages, promoting art as a part of all these as a part of tourism. So live heritage villages can showcase the best of Indian tradition, and it'll be a very interesting thing for building and integrating with tourism. Then creating art and craft festivals, which can showcase these things. And so there are a whole load of recommendations around how these can be propagated or promoted. And one important thing I would mention is establishing an e-trading platform, because these products can be traded across the world. Many of our traditional products like bamboo, a lot of bamboo products, uh, wooden products, etc., which are all biodegradable and environment friendly, can have global markets because the world is very worried about the environment. And so there is an opportunity for there, and creation of a very powerful online platform can really push this forward. The export of Ayurveda, yoga has already taken a good step in this, and also Indian consultancies. The Americans push a lot of their thinking through their consultancies. If you talk about the top 5 consultancies, none of them is Indian, except TCS, which like TCS, we need to build more consultancies which can spread our message, the Indian way of doing things, into the international world. Another one is IITs and IIMs, who are established, excellent institutions to push out and start working with other centers of excellence in other countries. So we actually export the excellence rather than saying that we are affiliated to Harvard. It's the other way around. These institutions are affiliated to IIT or IIM. And there are many other programs to beautification of public walls. You can have paintings in government offices. There's a lot of smaller activities on a relative scale, which are also extremely important. Now, another important initiative which I'm very personally interested in is to create a high potential women writers team. Identify 30 or 40 women writers and train them, coach them, counsel them to produce their first major work. Because writers influence culture, influence thinking. And so it's a very important aspect of cultural development. Now, the third part, so I've looked at the institutions, I've looked at some of the recommendations. The third part, very quickly, I'll go through 2 or 3 of them, is to protect the artists and provide some welfare activities and social net for them. So developing permanent opportunities at the panchayat level or linking with tourism, as I've said, giving more representation to artists in the Rajya Sabha, for example. Then more opportunities for special projects for women and youngsters. Building artist homes, or converting some of the homes where people can come and sit and create safe places for women to work. That would be important. And one big group is how do we reward or create social security for the artists? Launching a policy for fair and equitable remuneration. There is no minimum wages for artists. Most professions have. There is no pension scheme for artists, and there is no health insurance for artists. These are some of the things we could take up. because artists are left out. Just two more points I'm finishing now.
Okay.
Teachers, increasing the number of awards and honors for teachers. And finally, the last point I have is to strengthen the piracy control, because today's intellectual property rights is very important for artists, and many of them don't know about it. They don't get the support for it. So creating an institution or a program by which we protect the rights of the artists through their intellectual property registration will be extremely important. Thank you very much. I know it took a couple of minutes more.
Thank you, Mr. Rajshekharan. So Mr. Rajshekharan had explained that what recommendations he has given, which has been incorporated, all these recommendations has been incorporated in Dr. C.V. Anand Bose one-man expert commission. I would not like to go because of the paucity of the time, because he has already everything. So now I would like to invite my next guest, and he's Mr. Deepak Vishnath. Mr. Deepak Vishnath is MTech from National Institute of Industrial Engineering, Mumbai. He was commissioned in the Indian Navy on 1st July 1980 in the engineering branch. On completion of 22 years of naval services in 2002, he started working as a training consultant to corporate houses before joining HFH India Trust at the Jimmy Carter project site Lonavala in 2006. He worked at Habitat for Humanity India Trust from 2006 till 2016 in various capacities and roles. He was project manager at Jimmy Carter Work Project at Lonavala from 2006 to 2008, responsible for project management and M&E. He was director Habitat Resource Center, HRC, Mumbai 2008 to 2010. He was director, senior director, operations and technical services at HFH National Office from 2010 to 2015. He was consultant to HFH India 2015 to December 2016, and now he is consultant to HFH International as well as TCIS to provide technical support to the India team. Welcome, Mr. Rajshekharan Mr. Deepak on my show, and you have heard what our earlier panelist, Mr. Bhumrao, and as well as Mr. Rajshekharan has spoken. Now, we would like to know from you, because you are very closely associated with one-man expert commission of Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. So we would like to know from you, Mr. Deepak Vishnath, about the one-man expert commission. Please, Mr. Deepak Vishnath, please.
Thank you, Dr. Goel, and good morning to Mr. Bhumrao, Mr. Rajshekharan, and Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. I would like to just frame out the process of my talk so that I'm a little more lucid in what I'm trying to say. I'll give you a context of what work we do as Habitat International, how we came to be associated with the One-Man Expert Commission to complement its work, to support the work Dr. Anand Bose was doing for migrant and contract labor, the process of developing the report, that is the information collection, data collection, analysis, and putting it down in the report, and then with various other methods of interactions with stakeholders, tripartite meetings, how the report was drafted, and what are the basic recommendations. To start with, as an introduction, I work for an international INGO called Habitat for Humanity International, which is in the low-income housing space. The mission is to provide housing for all, specifically for the below bottom of the pyramid and the people with low incomes. So the methodology is to look at affordable finance, to look at construction technology, building materials, so that low-income families can access affordable, resilient housing. To expand the scope of the work, we have started a special program which is called the Terwilliger Center for Innovation in Shelter, which looks at developing market systems in building materials, making sure the poor have access to good building materials, they have access to construction services like masons, fabricators, etc., that they have access to affordable finance, and that the masons have skills required to actually deliver the housing on the field. Now, in this context, we were working with construction labor to see the gaps and the norms, etc. And when the lockdown happened, the largely the sectors affected were agriculture and construction, apart from manufacturing, because a large amount of the labor force is migratory in nature. And during the lockdown, loss of work, lack of social protection led to what we saw as the reverse migration. The government came up with quick schemes. They were very nimble, but still we saw some vulnerabilities which were exposed, and we decided to work on improving these conditions so that these vulnerabilities could be addressed. The method we followed was we did a quick survey of about 1,000 laborers who were going to board Shramik trains to their origin state. And this was done both in Gujarat and Maharashtra. With about 1,000 survey forms, we were able to collate data which gave us the information feed to put into the report. Apart from that, we did 3 roundtables under the support of Dr. Anand Bose. These roundtable conferences were with academics, with institutions involved in migration and labor, with labor union leaders, with NGOs, with corporate houses who are the principal employers, and of course some activists to better understand the situation so that we were able to take corrective measures. Based on these, some observations which came to the fore, I was just noting them down. Regarding migrations, were basically it's a socio-economic process which leads people to migrate either internally within the state or across borders from the origin state to the destination state. And predominantly the migrants are from the Adivasis, Dalits, minorities, poor, landless, because differentiated regional development causes them to seek livelihood, social mobility elsewhere. And migration is largely rural to urban, because urbanization has led to better opportunities in cities, though living conditions could still be abysmal. Migrants contribute a large percentage of the GDP, so it is a group of people which cannot be left aside when we make the labor codes. Now, having talked about the labor codes, we also will put into context the fact that the government, since the NCL recommendation in 2002, had been mulling over the fact of codifying the existing laws for labor. Now, as a result of this, 4 codes were developed: the Code on Wages, the Occupational Safety, Health, the IR, and the Social Security, which incorporated almost 40 central and state laws into 4 codes. Passed before the lockdown, 2019, and the others were tabled and passed by the Parliament later this year in the last session. And now the rule framed. So the idea was that this report would feed in with recommendations so that the labor codes could incorporate or review what are the suggestions which are coming from the field from the one-man expert commission. Quickly coming to the recommendations which we have made in the draft report, which is now with Dr. Anand Bose, is first to address the challenges of invisibility, informality, and fragmentation. There has to be a process of enumeration of labor, and this could be done at the origin state and at the destination state. Origin state is where the labor moves, and destination state is where they come to work. And you could have multiple destinations because there are seasonal labor, there are what are called oscillating labor, which keep moving from one place to the other or go back to their main origin villages sometime over the year or maybe after a couple of years. To address this invisibility fragmentation, we were suggesting a robust technology-led enumeration and registration process, which could also capture things like skill sets and requirement of training for the labor. Point number 2, creating a nodal agency, because the vulnerabilities exposed showed that the Ministry of Labor was really not up to full information availability to take the kind of actions which are required for social protection. So if we could create a national labor authority under which we could carry out various tasks, I mean, this would be like a authority of the Airports Authority of India, etc. and this would be an independent authority which would be tasked with various things. I mean, they're there in the report. One of them was to start migrant resource centers, which would be responsible for the enumeration and any kind of support services which migrant labor would require. And this can be expanded to informal labor in the future. Apart from this, the nodal agency would look at providing access to prompt and fair redressal of grievances or justice system, so that labor grievances need not go to the court and spend years in trying to be resolved. The other suggestion is that all informal labor be provided basic minimum social protection. By basic minimum social protection, of course, the ILO lays down 9 of these in their charter. The basic minimum we are recommending is what was recommended by the NCUS, which was set up in 2008, 2009, and it's contained in the report. It's basically unemployment wage, an old age pension, life and disability insurance, etc. So this basic minimum should be assured to every informal labor who are not under the EPF, the Provident Fund scheme or the ESIC scheme. Other recommendations which include are included in the report are access to safe, dignified jobs, decent work, which pay adequately for the labor. Access to housing. Now, housing is a big issue in urban areas because largely the housing accessed by the informal labor is also invisible. It is below the legal system. There may be no, lease agreements. It may be, totally informal. And most labor do not, the migrant labor do not fall under the PMAY schemes presently because they have a domicile challenge and they do not need permanent staying places. So creating decent, dignified housing with access to services in urban centers through maybe a rental housing complex, which the government has come up with now, or through a supply and demand match between the petty landlords who are providing housing spaces, by upgradation of existing slums or urban pockets where this kind of housing can come up, we can seek solutions of improving the housing for the migrant labor. Apart from this, there are recommendations on women, because women are face greater hardships as far as in the labor force. So addressing gender inequalities, addressing child rights to prevent child labor, and to ensure that the right to education is available to all families who migrate from their origin state to the destination state. And the last point is regarding the remittances, to have technology-led methodologies where there is ease of the migrants to send remittances back to the origin state, because eventually migration improves the economy both of the destination and origin state. And if we can harness financial services, digitized financial services, which eases the remittance flow from destination to origin, it will be a big boon. So these are some of the recommendations, and this is what we've been mulling over. That's my piece. Thank you, Dr. Lal. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Deepak. And Mr. Deepak has summarized that whatsoever, because he is closely associated in this one-man expert commission with Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. So he said his focus was on the labor as well, and mainly the migrants. And he has given the details how the migrants were highlighted in the recommendations, their welfare, which in the report Dr. C.V. Anand Bose Commission has included. Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak, for giving your details of the migrants and their welfare, which you have in this report. One Man Expert Commission has been, which they have included in this. Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite the man of the day today, and he is none other than Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, is one-man expert commission on labor to prepare an action plan for the welfare and development of the workforce in the context of COVID-19, and he is the author of this one-man expert commission report, which we are discussing today. He was former head of the Disaster Management Government of India and Central Draft Relief Commissioner Government of India. Dr. Bose is also the principal advisor Government of India Heritage Project. He is the chairman of Indian Red Cross Kerala. Dr. Bose was the vice chancellor of National Museum University of Delhi. He has authored 40 books in English, Malayalam, and Hindi, including novels, short stories, and essays. 4 of his books have become bestsellers. 4 books on Vastu and architecture and 1 book on housing received prestigious the Sharjah International Book Fair Award. Dr. Bose is an housing expert, innovator, writer, orator, and visionary. The path-breaking institutions set up by him, such as Nirmiti Kendra, Building Center, District Tourism Council, and Habitat Alliance, have been replicated in the state, national, and global level. He was the head of the prestigious Supreme Court Committee on the Treasures of Sri Padma Swami Temple. Dr. Bose addressed United Nations General Assembly and specialized sessions 5 times on various international issues. Dr. Bose is a recipient of 31 national and international awards, including United Nations Global Best Practice Award. He also received prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship. Kerala government termed him Lord of Ideas. Former Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh called him inspired civil servant, and our Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi called him Man of Ideas. Welcome, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, on our show. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, you have already heard what Mr. Bhumrao, what Mr. Rajshekharan, and what Mr. Deepak has mentioned about the one-man expert commission. But you are the person who has authored and who has wrote this report. So we would like to know from you, the one-man expert commission report. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. And thank you very much for inviting me as the last speaker, because when you come as the last speaker, I can boast to my wife and children that in this important meeting, I had the last word. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to arrogate myself the role of the Speaker of the Parliament. This is not because of any megalomaniac streak. You know, the Speaker is the only person in the Parliament who doesn't speak. So I thought, since the report is written by me, or rather coordinated by me, it is better that others speak about it and analyze it. Now, what happened is, Mr. Bhumrao, in his wisdom, he could persuade the government to appoint a one-man commission on labor. As you know, these labor commissions are created by government once in 20 years or so. It's a long process. Even the appointment will take more than a year. But because of the wisdom and experience of Mr. Bhumrao, he made it as part of the labor advisory board, so decisions were made quick. And that is how the genesis of this one-man expert commission. Then, when we speak about labor, it's not the migrant labor alone. Mr. Bhumrao had that vision that we should take the entire workforce of the country, especially the post-COVID rehabilitation and development, which comes to more than 46 crores of people, which is much more than the combined population of many European countries. When we think of rehabilitating them and the welfare of the 46 crores of people, naturally, art and artist soft power comes into focus. That is how this had a second subset of activities, that is on the artists, artisans, and culture, the soft power of India. The third aspect was the Pravasis. You know, in this forum, one agency which is missing is the International Labour Organization, ILO. You know, ILO is a world body which decides what should happen in the labor sector. ILO is also a part of this. ILO has willingly come forward to join this one-man commission. So now it's not just a one-man commission of India, it has even become a kind of international commission. And they have a lot of input to give on the Pravasis of the international migrant labor, which is very important in the future course of things to happen in India in the post-COVID world. So that part of the report is also there. Now, it happened like the building of tunnel in China. Chinese decided to have a long tunnel. The engineering chief said, let us start digging from both sides so that two tunnels will meet and the procedure will be fast forward. Finally, it ended up digging two tunnels. Similarly, the one report from the one-man commission has now resulted in 4 reports, each interlinked. One, of course, very ably, it was explained by Rajshekharan. He has been in charge of that. That is a report on India's soft power, or the traditional art, artisans, and labor, TOL, as he would call it. The second is on the Pravasis, which of course will form part of the report on labor. And next one is on one of the most important activities or economic sectors in India, that is a fisherman. The Blue Revolution is always the Neel Kranti. We are here with some recommendations to the government, how the fisheries sector and the coastline can be developed into India's pride. So these are the sum total of the reports which this commission is submitting to government. When I say is submitting to government, it doesn't mean that the reports are not yet with the government. With Bhumrao, we decided on a strategy. Instead of wasting time to complete the interim report and then the final report, why not recommend to government from time to time through letter whatever recommendation we feel will be beneficial to the nation. This has been done periodically, and many of these recommendations have found a place in the policy announcements made by the government. One, of course, is Mr. Bhumrao will remember, 4 or 5 years back when Mr. Dattatreya was the labor minister, that is when Mr. Bhumrao introduced me to Mr. Dattatreya, where we gave a recommendation which is called the labor agenda. One of the major emphasis activities there which are suggested was to have the courts, labor courts, unified to the extent possible or rationalized. That has been done. The parliament has passed the act. And number 2, an all India registration of labor was a recommendation which we thought will take a long time. But now government has announced it, 650 crores have been set up for this purpose. And also the one nation, one ration card. When this was discussed in a meeting, I think Mr. Deepika would know, even experts in economics were worried. How can it be done? Because ration food is a state subject. How can it be done nationally? But it has been done. New decisions have been taken very fast. So we were very encouraged to submit to government from time to time decisions, recommendations which we thought would result in action, and it is resulting in action. That means there is some chemistry change in the government. Government does not waste time in making recommendations into action and legislation. Therefore, we hope that these recommendations which are given here, of course, it will be first given to the chairman, then to the minister, then ultimately it should go to the prime minister. That is how the hierarchy of submissions are now tailored. This report, even though it is claimed a one-man commission's report, I, being the one-man commission, cannot take any credit for this. This report has been created by thousands of people. See, in the last lockdown period, more than 2,000 persons have been contacted. Representatives of labor, employer, employee, government, experts, practitioners, businessmen, industrialists, pravasis, all segments of society. And one thing which I owe to the global TV here, every week, they used to take up one aspect or the other of national importance and make it a topic of discussion. All those inputs have gone into this report. Like A.G. Gardner's Unknown Soldier, he says, my name is Legion. My name is not one, my name is Legion. Therefore, this report is also written by Legion. As Walt Whitman said, yes, I contain multitudes. This report contains multitudes. This report is not my report. I just happens to be the one man who is witnessing this. This report is written by the experience of a large subsection of people all over the world who have willingly shared their experience so that the report can become practical. The report can perhaps become a game changer in India's socio-economic and cultural life in the post-COVID period. I thank all of them, the nameless, faceless thousands who have contributed to this report. Now to sum up from my side, there is this very revealing story of a botanist. The botanist was going with his students in the jungles of Africa. He saw a beautiful flower. Enamored of its beauty, he came forward to pluck the flower. To his surprise, he found that the petals of the beautiful flower flew off in various directions. He looked at it sharply and he found it was not the beautiful petals of the beautiful flower, but a set of ugly insects which flew away from the flower. Then these ugly insects again fly back to another point, converge to another focal point, and the beautiful flower is again born. Whatever may be the scientific explanation for this transformation of ugliness to beauty, this transformation of the negative to the positive happens when there is a point of convergence. I think Mr. Bhumrao has created a point of convergence where all this dispersed ugliness conforms into beauty. Look at the panelists who are here. They are all experts in their own fields. My blessing is that I have been able to get experts from various fields who are willing to come for the aid of the nation in an hour of crisis. Therefore, I feel this report is not mine. This report, which is created by Legion, this will contain the quintessence of what India should do for the rehabilitation, not only of labor, but also of artists, to revive India's soft power. And of course, once this report is implemented, I'm sure government will implement it. Government has been implementing this. Therefore, I think after this report is implemented in full, then we can join together and say, Jhanda unja rahe hamara. Thank you.
Jhanda uncha rahe hamara, said Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. He very modestly and humbly gave the credit to everyone who has contributed in the report, although he is the main person who was the center of attraction, because everyone who was joining, because he is such a personality that he attracted everyone to give their positive suggestions, their views, opinions, and which has been compiled in this report. So from our side, we can say, yes, contribution has been done by many, many people, thousands of people, but you are the main person, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, that you have included everyone. That is the inclusive policy which you have adopted, and that's why this report. And one very important thing which he has mentioned is that in the commission, generally the commission submit the reports after many years. We have seen so many commissions in India. They have been appointed. They always get extensions, because they get so many facilities. They have the secretaries, even IAS secretaries. They have the infrastructure, offices. They are traveling from here to there with the cars, by plane. But this commission is a unique commission during this lockdown period, even after the lockdown unlock period also, which Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, confined to at his place, he has done it very economically, very timely, submitted the report. Plus, what he has done, what he has mentioned just now is that he, along with the chairman, Mr. Bhumrao, decided to submit in piece the reports whichever were relevant at that time, which were very urgently required, like one ration card, one nation, one ration card. That type of thing was implemented by the government immediately. And the credit definitely goes to Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, Mr. Bhumrao, as well as our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, to accept the recommendation and immediately implement this. This shows the position today, that how the commission should work. I am sure this type of example which Dr. C.V. Anand Bose has set up in the country, that the commission should not try to get any extensions just for their own benefits, I will not say, but they try to deliver the things which they were assigned for. Thank you very much, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, for giving your views and for your modesty and humbleness, I must say. Now, my question is to Mr. Bhumrao. Mr. Bhumrao, you being the chairman of Labour Welfare Board, and you have already explained the circumstances which led to such an important decision in national level to appoint one-man expert commission on labor. And in that, you have decided to appoint Dr. C.V. Anand Bose for this very important commission. But now my question to you is, what are your views on the recommendation of one-man expert commission and how you will take it forward? Mr. Bhumrao, please.
No, Mr. Goel, especially I am very thankful to you for Poor People Commission we appointed. We worked since 6 months for this commission and identify the problems, how to solve the problems, how many fields are there in India, labor fields. That's why what I identified since 4 5 years, I explained and I discussed with him. I requested him. This commission next week we are going to submit to the Mr. Labor Minister of India, and we will discuss with him also personally, and this report will submit it to the Prime Minister also. Then how best they will implement, what is their opinion, what is their experts' opinion, they will discuss on this and they will come to final implementation. This is my view. That's why next week I am coming to Delhi and I will meet, I will thankful to you personally, Mr. Anand Bosji, and I will get to him to Minister. We will discuss Labor Secretary and Labor Minister also. Then we will go to the Prime Minister office and we will submit that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bhumrao. And Mr. Bhumrao has given the roadmap very clearly that next week the report will be submitted to the minister, and once they will discuss with the minister, and once from there they will submit to the Honorable Prime Minister's office so that it will be the action can be taken. Thank you very much, and I'm sure that report, which has been authored by Dr. C.V. Anand Bose in consultations with many under your chairmanship of the Labor Advisory Board, definitely all the recommendations will definitely be implemented by our Honorable Prime Ministers for the benefit of the citizens of the country, especially the migrants, laborers, artists, artisans, etc. Now my question is to Mr. Rajshekharan. Mr. Rajshekharan, you have been the advisor to the Government of India, especially in fisheries sector. Your many advices were reflected in government policies. Now, what are your views on Dr. Bose Commission report, especially on fisheries, which had dealt in detail about the fisheries? Mr. Rajshekharan, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this enlightening discussion. Let me express a couple of very important thanks messages. First to Dr. Bose, because he's a very different person. My interactions with government have been different, but Dr. Bose has 4 qualities, which I must say. He's very knowledgeable, very informal, and he's also very fast, and he's action-oriented, which is very unusual I've seen among bureaucrats and people who have been in this cadre. So he's a very, very special person. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to participate in this. That's my first message. Secondly, I think first time I'm meeting Mr. Bhumrao, I also am very pleasantly surprised by his very active involvement and his initiative and the power with which he speaks to implement things. As you mentioned, rightly said, there have been many, many reports. I've seen a lot of international reports sitting on the shelf. Nothing happens. They gather dust, nothing else. So it's very interesting that Dr. Bose has taken the point of view to feed it piecemeal at the right time so that they get implemented. And it's a very, very interesting approach. So thanks for that. So that is just something I have to say. Secondly, from your question, I want to just add one more thing. As Dr. Bose said, now there are 4 tunnels. So there is an elephant in the room, because which is the sheer size of this project. If you look at it, there are so many dimensions to this. So one of my concerns is that how we are going to stage this, because we cannot implement all of them at the same time. Like any of these big projects, there is a phasing or a staging of this that needs to happen, which comes from 2 things. One, the relative importance of things, and also the relative urgency of things. So there needs to be a professional work done around the recommendations to look at resources, look at time, and look at priorities to say, how do we face this? Because there is so much on that. That's my only concern about this report, because it's fundamental. It'll change India forever. In a way, it needs to change. But the change is huge. So the whole change management is something I want to put on the table. Coming back to your question on fisheries, our recommendation on fisheries was done several years ago. I think it was in 2002 or 2004, after which the NFDB was formed, National Fisheries Development Board was formed. And we were commissioned by Dr. Ayyappan, who was the head of fisheries at that time under ICAR. So we gave a very detailed set of recommendations, some of which have been implemented. Now, I'll tell you the biggest challenge in fisheries from that report. One is that the marine fisheries is overexploited. You cannot do any more increase in marine fisheries because the sea is already overexploited. At the same time, there are a lot of people, fishermen, who live on that. So they have to find a different way of expanding their work and their livelihood. And the answer is inland fisheries. And in many countries, inland fisheries have made huge differences. For example, we have the World Authority on Fish sits in Hyderabad. His name is Dr. Mogadudu Gupta. He was one of our consultants. He has got the World Food Prize for fisheries. Now, he has changed the life completely in Bangladesh, Cambodia, many places, rice growing cultures, where there is a parallel fish growth along with with rice paddies, you flood rice paddies with water. And in 40, 60 days, they grow fish with it, and it's a second income for women. So there are so many possibilities with fisheries which we have not explored, we have not actually pushed. The second thing is our preferences are very different. Like in West Bengal, for instance, the preference is for, who are big fish eaters, preference is for freshwater fish. Whereas in my state, in Kerala, we prefer more of sea fish. So this requires huge infrastructure, whereas Kerala has got a lot of water bodies, and it's possible to grow a lot of fish in India, which may not be consumed in Kerala. So you can grow it in one place, but you need to have reefer containers, you have to have transportation mechanisms, storage facilities to make sure that this gets distributed, because the preference in India is also for fresh fish, not for canned fish or stored fish. So there's a whole bunch of things there, but it's a large community and it's a very important community, labor community, the fishermen, and that needs to be addressed. And the last part was also getting higher standards into it, like creating like patented fish shops. So it may be small porter cabins we give to traditional fishermen who will be given equipment, tools to clean fish, so that you get cleanliness, hygiene, and a standardized approach to selling fish, which can be very decentralized, which can be set up in near shores, near fish markets. So franchising concept to bring standards into this. So there is a whole set of recommendations. The other one was to lease reservoirs, like dams. We have so many dams and so many reservoirs, and they are huge sources of fish if you grow them. And with some innovative ways of transporting it downstream as well. So there were so many recommendations in it. We did a very major work on that. But to be honest, I don't think a lot of them have been implemented. So I was talking to Dr. Bose because of his energy and enthusiasm and interest, saying that why don't we look at it again? And there may be things which we can implement, which will make a big difference to the fishermen of this country, and to the nation, and to the economy, and to the user, the consumer as well. So that's in a gist, very quickly about that report. Um, and finally, what I would say is I'm very excited about this project, and I would be happy to continue to support in any way I can. I've already mentioned that to Dr. Bose. And thank you again, Mr. Goel, for organizing something like this, which brings us into the public domain, and it creates those essential discussions which are important to take such initiatives forward, because as Dr. Bose said, it belongs to the legions. So we can only be at best, some catalyst or a broker or a bridge between things. But at the end of the day, it has to be owned by the people. And that comes from a strong set of communications like what you're doing. So thanks to you, Mr. Goel, as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajshekharan, for giving the details about the fisheries and all other aspects also. Now, my question is to Mr. Deepak. Mr. Deepak, as you have already mentioned that you were the integral part of Dr. Bose Commission, and you have also enlightened us for the recommendations on rehabilitation and development of workforce in India. Now, and you also are aware that the International Labour Organization, ILO, has joined hands with the Commission, which is very, very heartening and very surprising rather, because a commission which has been appointed to see the migrants and the labour workforce in India has been made a part of, become a part of the International Labour Organization, ILO, and they have given so many inputs. Would you please enlighten us the positive steps suggested by the ILO for the welfare of labor force, particularly the migrants? Mr. Deepak, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Goel. Let me also place my thanks to you for organizing this, and to Dr. Anand Bose, to Mr. Rajshekharan, and Mr. Bhumrao. It was a pleasure and privilege to be with you on this panel. Now, to answer your question, some of these issues which migrants face, let's talk about basic minimum social security. By basic minimum social security, we mean that a informal labor who is not part of the Provident Fund or the ESIC setup, who is informally employed in a contracting chain where the principal employer may not even know whether the labor belongs to which contractor which they have engaged to get labor. The informality creates such a vulnerability for this worker if he loses his job, if he gets injured on site, if he is faced with dangerous, difficult work or degrading work, there is no protection. So as per the ILO standards, the benchmarks have been set up by ILO on basic social protection under 9 heads. Now, the government has worked to see that the Indian labor force at least gets 3 of those basic social protections available. These presently are life and health insurance, the Atal Pension Yojana, which can be partly contributory by the individual, and a loss of employment wage. With these 3, at least part of the vulnerabilities are taken care of, and a labor feels a little more secure. Now, the other challenges which are being addressed, like Dr. Bose said, about portability of the ration card. Now, the PDS is a state subject. Somebody from Orissa coming to work in Mumbai has 3 challenges. 1, they have a domicile challenge. Their ration card, which is made in Orissa, is not allowed to be used in, say, Mumbai, where they have come. Point number 2, there is a challenge of identity. Who are you in the state? You don't vote for them. So you're actually invisible. The third is the location challenge. A seasonal migrant may come to Mumbai for 2 months, then move to Ahmednagar for 2 months, and come back to Mumbai for 2 months. So they have a location challenge. And the last challenge they face is eligibility to any government scheme, because they're away from their home state. So with ILO supporting, with creating benchmarks of basic social protection, we are sure that in our report, when we put forward these recommendations, the government will start acting on them. And we've seen that in the case of the National Food Security Act. It is one nation, multiple ration cards also. In the sense, one person who migrates has his own ID to draw rations to wherever they migrated, and the family back home can access rations with their own ration cards. So you can have one family, multiple ration cards, and which are portable, totally portable. So this is one of the suggestions which is being taken up. The second is, of course, the enumeration registration, because we've got to formalize people to be able to track and give them access to healthcare or any other services. ILO's benchmarks, again, are helpful in devising the framework of the legal issues around labor. So that way we see ILO supporting us to achieve a workforce which gets fair wages, a decent place to work, a safe place to work, and is socially protected and not vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak, for giving your views about the ILO and their recommendations for this one-man expert commission. Now I'm coming to Dr. Bose. Dr. Bose, what has been your challenges, experience in dealing with various stakeholders in the field of labor and employment? Because in last 6 months, as I know, because we are doing a media conference with you every week, minimum once a week, but sometimes twice a week or thrice a week. And you are always busy doing webinars, morning to night. Whenever I call you, always busy with the webinars. So you have dealt with so many people every day. So what was your challenges and experience in dealing with the various stakeholders in the field of labor and employment and even other fields also? Mr. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, please.
I think the one experience which I would love to share with the public is that the greatest asset of India are its men and women. When it is said, not gold, but only men can make a people great and strong, I find that in India, the human resource is the greatest resource. You know, the quarrelsome or the apparently quarrelsome trade union leaders, you talk to them about issues. At the end of the day, whenever there is an opportunity for a consensus, they accept it. And the employers, there is a growing feeling, an undercurrent of consensus. If there is no labor, there is no industry. If there is no industry, there is no labor. And if there is no labor and industry, there is no growth. At one stage, I come from Kerala, where the trade unions have been decried by all sections. In fact, at one stage it was said, the motto was industrialize or perish. But when there is a militant trade union, people say industrialize and perish. But in the labor discussions which I found, I may try to put it in a lighter way. There was a revolutionary minister in Kerala, very tough man. You know, he was very tough, very action-oriented. He will not take no for an answer. His life was spent for public service. In this process, he forgot to get married. He didn't have time for that. And everybody persuaded him, he got married. A 25-year-old girl, this fellow is at that time 55 or so. The tough man that he is, he will come and order around. He will ask for, is my breakfast ready? This young girl will dutifully make breakfast for him. Is my car ready? She will call the car to the portico and so that he can go to office. Once the mother-in-law comes there, that is girl's mother. So she said, is this the way he behaves? Yes. He's a senior person, tough minister. The mother said, that's all the office, not here. You can't live with him in this manner. So what do I do? Tomorrow when he starts ordering you around, is breakfast ready? You should confidently tell him, breakfast is not ready, so what? So he asked for the breakfast. This girl shivered and served the breakfast. The mother said, no, you have to be tough. The next day, this lion of a man, he comes and says, is hot water ready? Egged on by the mother, this young girl tells him, hot water is not ready, so what? This tough man says, meekly, if hot water is not ready, I'll take bath in cold water. This is all the labor union crisis there. You know, if hot water is not ready, the employer will take bath in cold water. Similarly, other way around also. So there is a social consensus which is there. That is what keeps any society going. Therefore, I find that redefining the position of the labor and reworking the industrial relations in India is not an uphill task. Of course, it requires attention. When all these measures are implemented, it gives the labor the feeling that the state cares. That is what people expect of the state. The people know the state cannot give them everything that they want. But does the state care? Here, in the COVID handling, India has proved that here is a state which cares. And this applies not only to the government of India, it also applies to state governments. Indian federalism was at its best during the COVID period. Therefore, I feel these recommendations, which has come as a consensus of the people of India, will get implemented. That is what we have been seeing. Once that is done, the recommendations may be voluminous, but I think we will be able to have, as Rajashekharan said, not one, but two, but four tunnels, we'll be able to handle it properly. I have no hesitation that in the post-COVID world, India is going to lead even in the industrial relations sector. That is why ILO has come forward. I would also suggest that ILO should set up in India a global institute for industrial relations. There is a lack of that in the whole world. Not one institution, so many institutions are required. Now they have an institute in Turin, but that's only for training. I would say that India should become the seminal agency or the seminal country for the flow of ideas in various sectors, redefining the post-COVID world and restructuring the brave new world which is to come should become the duty of India, and India is ready. That is a great lesson we have learned from COVID. India is ready. India's labor is ready. India's artists are ready. If the government is ready, then why do we look back? I see before my eyes a noble and great India rising from its sleep like a giant and shaking its invincible lock. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bose, for giving your so forceful reply to the question of your experiences and challenges. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Bhumrao, are you there? Mr. Bhumrao?
Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Bhumrao, the last, I know that you are very busy, but only last thing is, what is your suggestion to government, if any, or advice to public?
Now, this situation, what we are working on this, I think government is very clear to do something for the 46 crores labor. They are thinking for them regularly. Their acts also they are forming labor codes and this that they are thinking on that, they are working on that. That's why we are already with my request with the Anand Bose. He prepared some suggestions to the government how best we can sort it out, how best we can do for them. Government is ready to do something for the poor people. One nation, one ration. All these are their concern for the society, poor society. That's where we are thinking it may be implemented.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhumrao.
I am very thankful to you. You organized for these poor people. This is the best program, my community.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your compliments.
And everybody, other people, other gentlemen are also there. I am very thankful to them also, Deepak and Ramchandra.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Now, my last to Mr. Rajshekharan, any one suggestion which you want to give because of the paucity of time, one suggestion in brief to the government or the advice to public. Please unmute. Please unmute.
My only suggestion is to engage the public-private partnership modes in a much bigger way, because government cannot put all the resources and the requirements are large. So getting engagement from private sector, corporate social responsibility funds, there is a lot of funds available, a lot of resources available. So it needs everybody to work together. So that is my only suggestion.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Deepak, any one suggestion to the government? Please unmute. Yeah.
So basic tenet of any labor law or rule or code is socio-economic justice for labor. And I think we are on that path, well aligned to achieve it. And as Mr. Rajshekharan said, we have to get everybody, all stakeholders to think together, align together so that we can make India great.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, last word. I know that you want to say about the last word. So please, your suggestion to the government, if any.
My only request is to see that effective steps are taken to implement them. What we want is action, not an alibi for inaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So today you have seen the one-man expert commission report authored by Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. And that report now is seeing the light of the day, and very quickly, very soon, and with so much, we all know that how much problems and the difficult time we were facing in this pandemic. But in spite of that, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose has delivered his commission's report in time. Such a great efforts to him. I must say, we must salute him and the entire team of his, so that they have delivered this report. And today's program, which is a live telecast by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And tomorrow is a special day because tomorrow is the world is not celebrating, but we are observing the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And for that, the media conference with Lal Goel, the topic is crime against women. And we have an elite panel of women. And my panelists are Advocate Nirmala Samant, First Lady Mayor of Mumbai, former Chairperson, Maharashtra State Commission for Women, Mumbai, Advocate Madhulika Sainia, former panel member, Meditation Center, New Delhi, Miss Nutan Jha, MD and CEO, Adlib Sports and Project Management, Mumbai, Miss Taranga Sri Raman, former National Consultant, Ministry of HRD, former member, Inclusive Education Working Group Task Force Ministry, RTE, SSA, National Advisory Council, Government of India, and Miss Sarik Ankita, Head of the Department of Criminology, School of Social Work, Roshni Nyalaya, Mangalore. So please tune in tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhumrao. Thank you very much, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. Thank you very much, Mr. Rajshekharan. And thank you very much, Mr. Deepak, for joining us and enlightening our viewers about the one-man expert commission report authored by Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. Thank you, all the viewers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.